Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle, the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, the pilot, and then use it to ascertain if we should watch the entire series or at least the second episode. I thought I'd change it up there a little bit with the word ascertain. Now, on this episode of The Pilot Principle, we shall be taking a look at episode 1 of Netflix's new psychological dark true crime series, Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story. I did a poll over on Instagram at Pilot Principle to let you guys decide which pilot review that I should do this week. And of course, it was a choice between Monsters and The Penguin. And you guys wanted Monsters. Now, I know, because I did initially a couple of episodes ago say that I would do both. But unfortunately, there are just not enough pod hours in the day. So I left it in your hands, and this is what you provided. The series synopsis for Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, is as follows. They looked like a perfect family, but secrets hid behind closed doors. This true crime drama delves into one of California's most infamous murder cases. Now, I don't know if you can tell by the accent, but I am in fact not American. And I'd actually never heard of this murder case, nor Erik, nor Lyle, nor Menendez. So all of this is completely new to me, but we'll get into that. Firstly, it is time for the credits, which I know some of you love it and some of you hate it, but let's get into it. So to start with, huzzah, we have a pilot title. Yes! And the pilot title for episode 1 of, I'm just going to call it Monsters for short, because calling it Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, it's just too many words. I will be here for longer than my allotted time, and nobody wants that. So Monsters for short. So the pilot title for Monsters is Blame It on the Rain. And the title is taken from a Milli Vanilli song that plays in the episode. The pilot synopsis tells us, plagued by dark thoughts after the murders, Erik opens up to his therapist and shares disturbing details that put the doctor in a difficult position. I really did not like this synopsis at all because I think it assumes that the audience have more knowledge than they do. I honestly read it and was like, what murders? What are you talking about? And yes, I understand that we kind of already understand contextually what this show is going to be, but I don't know, you just happened upon only the pilot synopsis. I think it's just a little bit confusing. We have an episode length of 57 minutes and a series length of 9 episodes, which I don't know what it is about odd numbered series lengths that I don't know, just puts me on edge. Why 9 and not 8? Or why 9 and not 10? I don't know, weird, but that's Netflix for you, which is of course where you can watch all 9 episodes of the series. The pilot, Blame It on the Rain, was written by Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan, who both serve as the show's creators. Now, Murphy also created Glee, American Horror Story, Scream Queens, Feud, and Pose. And he's also cited as the creator of the procedural shows Dr. Odyssey, 911, 911 Lone Star, and he wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Sorry, does this person even sleep? Like, how have you got that much? Wow, I am in awe and I am also in envy. Good for you, Ryan Murphy. Moving over to Brennan, he is also listed as the creator of Glee, Scream Queens, and he wrote episodes of Ratched, and he was the narrator on Glee, which I don't recall anyone other than Rachel doing an inner monologue narrating Glee, but sure, whatever, good for him. As a pair, Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan also did the first monster anthology, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. Blame It on the Rain was directed by Carl Franklin, who has directed episodes of The Newsroom, which is one of my favourite shows of all time, House of Cards, Homeland, The Affair, 13 Reasons Why, and recently American Sports Story, Aaron Hernandez, which was just released on FX/Hulu, and based on that alone, I can kind of see why he'd be a good fit for the Erik and Lyle Menendez story. Lyle and Erik? Potato, potato. Speaking of potato and potato, moving on to cast, we first have Nicholas Alexander Chavez, who plays Lyle Menendez. And Chavez has starred in over 300 episodes of General Hospital, and he will be in the upcoming TV series Grotesquerie. Cooper Koch, I think it's Koch, I'm going to go with Koch. Cooper Koch plays Erik Menendez, and Koch has starred in Power Book 2, Ghost, and the TV movie A New York Christmas Wedding, which sounds right up my street, to be honest. It's giving Hallmark vibes. As well as this, Koch has starred in a handful of shorts. Also on the selected cast list, we have Mr. Javier Bardem, who plays Jose Menendez, and Bardem has starred in the likes of Being the Ricardos, Skyfall, No Country for Old Men, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, Eat, Pray, Love, and then, of course, the live action The Little Mermaid and Lyle Crocodile, because the man has range. And finally, on the selected cast list, we have Chloe Sevigny, who plays Kitty Menendez, and Sevigny has starred in Big Love, Russian Doll, Feud, The Act, Bloodline, and American Horror Story. The pilot also stars Jeff Perry, literally for all of 2 seconds, but I had to mention him because Perry played Cyrus Bean in the popular series Scandal. And finally, we have Dallas Roberts, who plays Dr. Oziel. And can somebody please confirm for me whether Roberts is related to the Ritters? Because I honestly felt like I was staring at the late, great Paul Ritter the entire time he was on screen, and it was a little discerning. As a reminder, Roberts has starred in Glass Onion, Insatiable, and he played Alicia Florrick's brother on the series The Good Wife, which is also actually one of my favourite programmes, even though I've only watched it in its entirety once. Before we go any further, I need to do a very quick disclaimer. So, you may or may not know that Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, is in fact based on true events. Personally, I do not know what these true events are. I had never heard of Lyle nor Erik Menendez until seeing basically the trailer for the show. Therefore, just to make it clear, I will only be reviewing this pilot episode as a piece of fiction, or as a piece of scripted drama is probably the best way to put that. So if I ever sound callous or judgmental or flippant, or am making any sort of jokes, I am judging the events that are being laid out before me on screen in isolation and not in context to real events. Now that that's been said, let's talk about what made me want to watch the series. And I'm not going to lie to you, I had no intention of watching Monsters. I did not watch the Jeffrey Dahmer story, the first anthology in the monster verse. However, I did see the teaser trailer for the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, and I thought, that looks cool. But also, hell no. Hell no, because it made me nervous and a little scared. So I was like, it's not for me. No, thank you. And it's funny because as you may know, if you've been listening for a while, I bloody love a murder mystery. I don't mind a bit of graphic violence in film, and I will read about a sociopath any day of the week. However, fiction? Fiction is an entirely different kettle of fish. I know that what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm consuming, no matter the influence, is not real. Names and places have been invented and events have been exaggerated for audience enjoyment. Monsters is not that. Monsters is not that at all. And ultimately, the reason that I am sitting here reviewing the pilot episode for Monsters is that when I put the poll up, I did kind of hope that you would all pick to watch The Penguin. That's basically that's what I wanted to watch, but it's fine. It's okay. I took a shot and I lost, and that is okay because the good thing about doing this pod is that it gives me a reason to push myself out of my comfort zone. And I suppose for, educational purposes, it will be interesting to see how they manage to carve a true story into a TV formula, because I will likely read up about what happened in real life after I watch the pilot episode, or, if I decide to watch the entire series. And on that note, I will say that I do typically avoid watching or listening to other reviews before I make these podcast episodes. However, one little thing slipped through the cracks. One little teeny tiny bit of information slipped through the cracks. And that is that Erik Menendez spoke out against the series. If that doesn't rattle your bones, I don't know what will. And with that being said, I can't think of a better intro to get into talking about the first 10 minutes. Why the first 10 minutes, you wonder? Well, that's because it is the proverbial fuse on an Acme stick of dynamite being lit. The first 10 minutes of a pilot episode should, in fact, guide us to the explosive main event that will hopefully keep us watching the rest of the pilot episode. And the first 10 minutes of, oh gosh, what's it called? Rain on Me Rainer. The first 10 minutes of Blame It on the Rain goes like this. Two guys are in the back of a limo. These guys are Lyle and Erik Menendez, and Lyle is prattling on about Mr. Buffalo franchise stores or something until Erik says, "Are those Dad's shoes?" The answer is yes, and Erik starts to cry. Lyle first yells at him, but then comforts him, reminding Erik that they would be proud of us. At Lyle's insistence, the boys get dropped off by the limo at the entrance to a venue where reporters are frothing at the mouth and the police do a poor job of keeping them back. One reporter says to Lyle, "Erik, did the mafia kill your parents?" After Lyle corrects her, saying that "I'm not Erik, I'm Lyle," he finds a camera and threatens the mafia before entering the building. The event, with the horde of reporters, is a memorial service for Jose and Kitty Menendez. Erik gets up first to talk about their mum, Kitty, and Lyle gets up to talk about their dad, Jose. It's a weird vibe made weirder still when Lyle chooses to end their speech to the song "Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You" by Milli Vanilli. We cut to the title, but that's only the 8-minute point, so I'll keep going. The year 1989 comes up on screen, and then through shots of palm trees, pumpkins, and horror-themed decorations, we can ascertain that we are in California around Halloween. We watch Erik work out, play tennis alone, and cry in the shower, while the audio from a radio or TV does the work for us in letting us know that it has been 2 months since the murder of Kitty and Jose Hernandez. The police are no closer to finding their killers, and it is still an active investigation. Erik, who is watching the news when he learns it is an active investigation, suddenly hears an echoed gunshot. He then walks over to a room and we hear what is assumedly the murder of his mother, so we hear screaming, crying, and gunshots. The room itself is empty, though there are bloodstains on the couch. Erik then puts a shotgun under his chin, pulls the trigger, and then wakes up. And that is the 11-minute mark. I don't know about you, but holy palooza. As an intro, it's really, it's weird because there's nothing there, but there is everything there. Like on the surface, everything is peachy keen. Like Erik crying at the sight of his dad's shoes because, they're on their way to their memorial service and, he's sad that, his dad is dead. But then again, he doesn't seem upset. He seems afraid. And we're like, what are you scared of? Why are you so afraid, Erik? And then, of course, there's the weird memorial moment where everyone in the crowd is sort of looking at each other, thinking, why have you chosen to play Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You by Milli Vanilli? It's a weird choice when talking about your mum. Then there's Erik crying in the shower, among doing everyday things like playing tennis and making breakfast. And then there's, of course, his visceral suicide attempt to top it all off. Oh my God. Okay, no pun intended. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that the opening doesn't give you a lot up front, but it plants seeds of suspicion and discomfort really, really well. Now, let us talk about our main characters, and hopefully I get this right because watching the pilot reminded me of watching series 1 of Bridgerton, where I honestly could not tell those brothers apart. Now, yeah, of course, 100%. Benedict Bridgerton is my ride or die. I am so looking forward to his series. But during the first couple of episodes, that's just nothing. Now, for context, in the pilot, we watch as Erik and Lyle and Erik, kill their parents. No ifs, ands, or buts. They done did it. Now that we're clear, let's talk about Lyle Menendez, who is the older brother. Now, Lyle is, simply put, he's just a bit rude. He shouts all the time at everybody, his brother, the chauffeur, the reporters. He's just shouting, just be quiet, you're just so loud. And he's incredibly volatile. Like, he's not just shouting, he's also swearing. And it's like, tone it down a couple of notches, you privileged white guy. That's the kind of vibe he gives off. My Ferrari is more expensive than your Ferrari, and you're just the help. So, yeah. And on that vein, I do think one thing to note about Lyle is that he maintains appearances. So, despite the fact that it has been 2 months since the murder of their parents, in the house that they are still living in, he is handing out candy on Halloween, which is his favourite holiday of the year, and he's driving around in his flashy car. We also know that Lyle is a Princeton dropout and that he wants to, or at least wanted to, marry his girlfriend. We have a flashback moment of him telling this to his parents. And while his parents are shouting at him, his dad included, his dad is very harsh on him, but it does look like Lyle gives as good as he gets when he's talking about wanting to get married because he's only 20. And his parents are like, no, she's a gold digger. And he's like, guys, you're hypocrites. You literally got married when you were 20. And after this line about being a hypocrite, his mum reveals a secret about him that his brother Erik didn't know. And when I tell you, I know I've told you this before, but when I tell you that my jaw hit the floor, I'm not even exaggerating this time. I've got a bruise. My jaw dropped and stayed dropped for a solid 3.5 minutes. The scene moved on, but I didn't move on. And I'm not going to tell you what it is in case in case you watch it for yourself, because it's so shocking that it just has to be seen to understood. If you know what I'm talking about, yeah, yeah. So later on, when he is telling Erik about the secret, Lyle says, Dad made me do it. I guess that Lyle, despite all his rudeness and his volatility and his bullishness, was pretty securely under his dad's thumb. Overall, considering we know what they done did, Lyle seems to be more in control than Erik, which could be something to do with him being the older sibling and just trying to manage his baby brother, but honestly, you'd never know that he was affected by what they did. Unlike Erik Menendez, who is the younger brother, and he is relatively quiet and sensitive, at least compared to his older brother Lyle. Now, in the flashbacks we see of the Menendez family, Erik is typically the observer. He's sat to one corner with a book in hand. He's quiet at the dinner table watching his brother and his parents fight. However, we do know that he isn't immune to his dad's lashing. So we do see his dad yell at him in front of everybody when he loses a tennis match. Like, his dad literally storms onto the court and shouts at him. He's literally just lost. The umpire is still there. The crowd is still there. But Jose Menendez gives 0 Fs. Another thing to note about Erik is that he idolizes his brother. What is quite interesting and unexpected is that it is Erik's idea to kill their parents. And he says this idea comes to him after the thing with Lyle is revealed at the dinner table. And then later on he watches a movie called Billionaires Boys Club. And then he realizes how similar the characters in the movie are to him and his brother. And yeah, that's apparently where the idea to kill their parents came from. I've not seen Billionaires Boys Club, so I cannot say if it, induces thoughts of patricide, but apparently it did in Erik Menendez. Now we learn that killing their parents was in fact Erik's idea throughout the course of the episode. However, it does mean that we now understand why in the first 10 minutes Erik is crying in the shower and having dreams of suicide and hearing the ghost of his parents' murders. And to deal with this heavy burden that he brought upon himself, Erik calls up his old therapist, Dr. Oziel, to help alleviate some of the pressure inside of him, and he basically spills the beans and the milk about the whole shebang. And Erik has come to see Dr. Oziel to help him feel better. He wants his therapist to tell him that he is not a bad person. Let's quickly rewind. During the memorial service, when Erik is on his way up on the stage to give a speech about his mum, someone says to Lyle, is he going to be okay? And then Lyle says, Erik is a great actor, he once did a soliloquy. Now listen, I'm sure a lot of people have done soliloquies. Not me, I can't remember lines for shit, but other people, I'm sure, have done soliloquies. However, Erik is a great actor. Foreshadowing. Absolute foreshadowing. Coupled with the fact that it was Erik's idea to their parents. I just can't believe much of what comes out of his mouth, despite the manifested guilt and the tears, which might as well be crocodile tears. I don't trust Erik, which is saying something because Lyle is definitely the unlikable one out of the two from the pilot episode, but Erik? No, don't trust him either. Even though they only feature in flashbacks through the point of view of Erik when he's talking to Dr. Oziel in therapy, let's just quickly touch on Jose and Kitty Menendez, who, we can see aren't the easiest people in the world to live with, okay? So Jose is a tennis coach and he is domineering, imposing, harsh, critical, volatile. We see him smash a plate when one of the boys doesn't get a trivia question correct. He's essentially just incredibly verbally abusive. And then there's, of course, Kitty, who typically ignores her husband's rants and raves. But Erik does say that one of the reasons that they decided to kill her, despite her not necessarily being the abusive one, is because she was half dead anyway, with the way that she was throwing back pills because Jose cheated on her. She was addicted to Jose and she couldn't quite take the fact that he would stray. And so, according to Erik, they were doing her a service by putting her out of her misery because she was already on her way there. Yeah. I think we could all do with a much needed break from all the misery. So now it is time for a quick interlude to see what film and TV life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. And of course, we start with the books, and I have in fact finished reading Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Boy, oh boy, I don't know if No, I think that it was sad. It was sad. It was beautifully done, but it was also very, very sad and mostly unexpected. And I do like the way that the reader felt like Piranesi, just confused about what was happening, but just accepting it as our reality. Yeah, very, very cleverly done. Very, very smart. I would recommend it if you like your contemporary fiction to be a little out there. It's relatively short. I have then started The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, but I haven't read more than maybe like 50 pages. I think, funnily enough, I think I've just finished what would be the book equivalent of the first 10 minutes. So the main character, whose name I do not recall because I have not picked up this book in a couple of days, has just been sent on an assignment, which means that we at this point know all about their everyday, what's the norm for them, and they have now been thrown into their adventure. Reluctantly, in this main character's case. In regards to film, I watched, finally, Sing Sing. And you know what? I haven't actually had a chance to allow myself to think about it since I watched it. And so I can't eloquently say more than the fact that it was a good film. I think calling it Sing Sing is deceptive, but in a smart way, because Sing Sing is the name of the prison where this amateur theatre group do amateur theatre. And I didn't really know what it was about. Before I went to watch it. That's basically my MO. I just walk in blind to half the things I do. So I thought I don't know what I thought it was. Well, I knew it was about like an amateur theatre thing for people who have been in prison, but I thought they used to be in prison. I didn't know that it was taking place in prison. Yeah, man, bittersweet, but a good movie. I recently watched Welcome to the Punch. This one is on Netflix, I believe, and stars Mark Giuseppe Strong and, oh gosh, Tumnus. Oh, gosh, give me a second here. Nope, can't remember. That's going to come to me really randomly. And that wasn't a good film. However, it was still thrilling. I was on the edge-ish of my seat-ish. Welcome to the Punch has been on my Netflix list for the longest time, so I was just pleased to just tick that one off. And finally, most recently, I watched Grave of the Fireflies on Netflix, which is a Studio Ghibli movie. And my God, why is that movie so sad? Like, I didn't cry, but I felt like I wanted to the entire time I was watching the film. That's not a kid's movie. It's not a kid's movie at all. It's a depressive reflection on children of war. And I didn't see that coming. So yeah, I'm still unpacking. Literally watched it yesterday. So we'll see how that goes. And also in terms of film, there's just sort of loads of new stuff and exciting stuff on Netflix. So I need to get myself in gear. I definitely need to try and watch The English Patient before it disappears. Can't believe I've still never seen that movie. His Three Daughters is on Netflix, and I've heard really good things about that. And yes, I know Ugly's dropped recently, but I probably won't be watching that anytime soon. I loved the books when I was younger, but I think the movie is just a little bit too late for the time. So finally, over in TV land, I did in fact binge over the course of a week Night Sleeper, which was the last pilot review I did. So I won't give you any spoilers in case you want to go over and listen to that. But I will tell you that Night Sleeper did exactly what I thought it was going to do, and I wasn't mad at it. Otherwise, in TV land, I started watching Terminator Zero. I've only watched an episode and a half so far. I'm not really into Terminator, the whole franchise, but I figured I'd give it a go. I need to start The Penguin, and I have been eyeing Twilight of the Gods, which is the new. Oh goodness, I'm just so bad with names. The guy who did. The something cut. Snyder. Zack Snyder. It's the new Zack Snyder animated series on Netflix. So, yes, that is also on my radar. All right, before we get back into scrutinizing Blame It on the Rain, if you have made it this far and you are enjoying yourself, now's a good time to hit follow. Or, to share this podcast with somebody who you think would enjoy it. You wouldn't just be helping yourself out, you wouldn't just be helping them out, you would also be helping me out, because if you're following, then it means that I need to maintain a somewhat promised schedule, because as we've seen, yeah, sometimes I just go left. In regards to the end of episode hook for the pilot episode of the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, Blame It on the Rain, Dr. Oziel asks Lyle to come down to his office where Erik is waiting. Oziel tells Lyle that he knows what they did. However, even though, Lyle is literally hitting the fan, Dr. Oziel tries to assure them both that he legally can't say shit. I wonder how true that is. However, what Oziel has done is called his mistress down to his office as a witness, and she's in the waiting area, and she basically overhears a little of what Lyle is yelling, because he's a yeller and he just needs to tone it down about 10 notches. But she does hear him say something incriminating, and then she runs away. Now, Lyle eventually doth drag Erik out of Dr. Oziel's office, and then tells his younger brother that now they have to kill Dr. Oziel. I don't know how Dr. Oziel didn't see this coming personally, but we move. Now, in terms of serial arcs and my predictions for the series, because yes, as a reminder, I know this is based on a true story, but I do not know what the true story is, and I am looking at this purely as a piece of scripted drama. Now, with that all being said, I have no idea where the series is going. But sure, Lyle says they need to now kill the therapist. Are they actually going to do that? Are they mass murderers now? I mean, they killed their parents for convenience based on apparently a triggering movie, but do they really need to kill the therapist too? Is that what they're doing? I'm also thinking that over the course of the series, we will discover what really made them, Erik specifically, snap and decide to kill their parents. As I said earlier, legally, does the therapist have to keep their mouth shut? Or is he lying, and is he going to be, if this thing goes to trial, is he going to be up there on the stand swearing nothing but the truth, the whole truth, and all the truth, so help him God? I don't trust the therapist fully. He gives sort of like money grabbing, ready to make a name for himself type vibe, as in he probably can't wait to write about this in his own biography. Is that going to happen? Is he going to trick Lyle and Erik? Oh, maybe Lyle and Erik will keep coming back for more therapy sessions. But then surely the whole thing can't take place in therapy. Whether or not Dr. Oziel opens his big mouth, I'm not going to lie to you, Lyle and Erik were very, very bad at parricide. They have no alibi. Their prints are all over the guns, which they buried very shallowly in the woods. I mean, 100,000, 10% they'll get caught, right? What happens next? Will they be convicted is the question, Will the evidence be found? Will it hold up in a court of law? Will they then go to prison? What would they go to prison for? I do think all of this will be explored over the course of the series. Looking at specifics, and specifically what made the pilot episode strong, I think first and foremost it was the dynamic of the brothers. At one point, Lyle says to Erik, "You have to shoot first so you don't back out." What? What I did like about this though is it just reinforces that as you're watching the pilot episode, you have conflicting thoughts about who is in charge, or which brother I should say, is the driving force. Yes, Erik came up with a plan. However, Lyle was like, shoot first. So he also wants to go along with the plan. Yeah, it's hard. It's interesting one, the dynamic between the two of them. And I will say what I thought was fantastic about the pilot episode is that the undertone is perfect. Genuinely, even talking about the show is giving me the heebie jeebies. Erik constantly in tears, the echoed sounds of murder at the start, the family dinner scene where Jose literally goes from yelling at Lyle to hugging him, comforting him, and like kissing him on the head. And then also Kitty, who we think is just a bit of a laid back, quiet woman. She just goes a bit wild, to be honest, for the context of the conversation that they were having at the dinner table. The bit that made my jaw drop. Like, why would you act like that? Why would you do that? And it's those kind of thoughts and questions that keep you on edge throughout the entirety of the pilot episode. Ooh, chills. Now, on the flippity flip side, in terms of what was relatively poor about the pilot episode, I think the flashbacks felt a bit disjointed. So we mostly do get to know Jose and Kitty when Erik talks about them to Dr. Ozil, but the present didn't necessarily flow into the past very seamlessly, and so honestly took you out of the story for the beats that switched between past and present and present and past. I will also say that so much happens in episode 1 that I'm not sure I even need to keep watching the series. I mean, sure, there's more to happen, but what more is there to happen? Other than, one glaring question, why did they really snap? What's really left to tell me that will keep me invested? Which is a great segue to asking whether you will be continuing with Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story. Here are a few reasons why it might be for you. Firstly, if you like true crime. Personally, I can't speak for this, but I suppose if you know, you know. If you liked the Jeffrey Dahmer story, perhaps you would also enjoy the Lyle and Erik Menendez story too. So far from episode 1, I feel like the show is going to be a bit of a slow burn. We learned so much in episode 1, but we literally still have 8 episodes to go. So who knows what we're going to learn along the way and how that will be drip fed to us. The final reason why I think you might like the Lyle and Erik Menendez story is because of the dynamic between the brothers and their characterizations, and I think it will be quite interesting to see how that plays out. With Lyle being the older brother, slightly more, I don't want to use the word controlling, let's go with directive when it comes to Erik and keeping him on track and keeping their secret intact. Or will it actually be Erik who turns out to be the more dangerous of the two? It's hard to say. And that's why you might want to keep watching to find out. However, on the flippity flip side, here are the reasons why it might not be for you. Firstly, it feels like it's going to be a very, very dark series. I mean, the pilot wasn't that bad, except for the brutal murder of both Lyle and Erik's parents, but it is an 18 with a litany of labels and trigger warnings, and so you might just not want to get yourself into that. Like I say, I have the heebie-jeebies talking about it. So if you do not like anything remotely scary, eerie, or creepy, stay away. The second reason why the series might not be for you is because of the Hollywoodification of real stories for profit, which can feel a bit icky, and you might not want to buy into that. And finally, if you prefer facts over fictionalization of events for entertainment, then I get the feeling this will also be a no for you, and perhaps instead you can find a lovely documentary about the Lyle and Erik Menendez story. We are close to rounding up, but firstly I need to give Blame It on the Rain a pilot score, and I will be giving it a 4 out of 5. The pilot excels in building up our central characters and creating a deep-seated sense of unease for all that has gone unsaid in the pilot but will likely be exposed in the series. Ultimately though, I think it falls ever so slightly short for me in the way that it ended, because honestly, Do I need to keep watching? Despite Lyle telling Erik that they now have to kill his therapist, it just wasn't enough to convince me 100% to continue on to episode 2. And so, yes, ultimately, this is a hard one for me. I think the pilot, as a technical vehicle, ticks all the boxes to make me want to continue. But also, I really don't want to continue. Like, yes, obviously, because I'm a little scared, but also because I don't like the fact and fiction mixing in such an unhelpful way. I don't know. I might watch episode 2. I might. If I had to pick between yes and no, I would pick yes. I think it's the right time of the year and I'm a bit of a mood watcher. So if I was going to watch something like this, it would be now. I can't imagine binge watching it. Maybe it'd be like an episode a week type situation. But even though I've just said all of that, I'm still not sure. I'm still not sure. Thank you for joining me this week. Let me know if you kind of understand why I am on the fence about this one and what decision you have chosen to make. And based on that, if you think I should take the plunge one way or the other for Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story. You can let me know over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle, and I will catch you on the next episode. Aww.